in service today presentation is going to be on Northeast Counseling's new Catastrophe Preparedness and Recovery Plan booklet, which I hope everyone here has a copy of. What we'll do is we'll go through the booklet. I'll explain all of the compartments and all of the components that are involved and add some things in there which you should know. To those of you who don't know me, my name is Bob Piasecki. I'm the coordinator with Partial 2, Partial 3 in the Psychosocial program. I'm also chairman of the Northeast Counseling Safety Committee. The purpose of giving out these booklets is since 9/11, there's been many changes coming down about preparedness due to the terrorist threats and everything involved with that. So as we go along, we have workman's comp asking that we have this, we have insurance companies asking that we have this, and the purpose really, I think, for all of them involved is that the local population, the more people they could get involved with any type of preparedness during an emergency, whether it be national or local, that people would know what to do. For our point of interest here is that our preparedness here, and many things I will say, you could use not only here, but also at your home. Not everything is going to pertain to the employment atmosphere that we are in. So many things that I say, some tips I will turn out, you can also do at home and keep them in mind. The two words that I would like everybody to remember, if you don't remember anything else about this whole thing, remember the word time and remember the word pass. I'll get to them as we go along. The word time and the word pass. Both are important. Equally important on your job and equally important probably in your home. The one thing that we start off with, if you open it up there, they do have the intention of Northeast Counseling Services to protect the physical safety of our service population, visitors, and staff. And it lists everything that we have down there that we will go through. Our three biggest threats that we would have on the job would be fire, naturally, threats against persons, or any kind of a bomb threats that would come through. And the third one would naturally be, from one of our utilities, would be gas leaks. As you know, we did have one time in Hazleton, and that situation there could have turned out to be a very serious incident down there. But those are the two words. The first one we have is down here, as they do say, before the catastrophe, make sure your working area is secure, specifically that files are placed in cabinets, and that's sort of like on a normal basis for everyone to have that. When we get down to the procedure area, this would be coming under now what we call, first area we'll be studying will be the fire area. The safety committee will conduct tests of the main alarms annually. Biannual fire alarms will be conducted, general directions for responding to the alarms, and we will go from there. The one thing I'd like to emphasize is this. Due to what we have in our world today, don't write off fire alarms as a nuisance, especially in today's world. If you hear the fire alarm ring here, get out of the building. That's why it's ringing. It could be a drill, but you don't know that. There have been instances with fire alarms in the past where not everybody would leave the building. This is something that you cannot have in any type of emergency. Remember, what you're going to deal with is an emergency situation. In that emergency situation, remember my word time. You don't have time to sit around and think about what you're going to do. Get out. Get out. You don't have the time and luxury to do that. When we get down to probably under A there, know your nearest fire exit. We do have on each corner of every building, we do have a diagram of where the fire exits are in all of our buildings. Just as a matter of fact, as you come into work each day or something, always take a look at them so that you would know where your nearest exit is. A tip here to give you is this. One thing you should always be aware of is no matter where you go, whether you're in a hotel, whether you go to the movies, where you go to the mall. I do this all the time. Most firefighters do this. Go in a strange building I've never been in before, first thing I look for, where are the exit signs? If I have an emergency in that building, how do I get out? Again, I'm going back to that one word, time. I know that if I don't know and don't look, if there is an emergency in that building of some type, the time it's going to take for me to find one might be the difference between living, dying, or being injured. So always remember that. Always go, no matter where you are. If you're going to a hotel, going on vacation, look for your exit. Here's another tip about a hotel, too, I'll give you. Try to get on a floor, at least the 8th floor or below. Don't try to go. If the hotel is 35 stories, don't pick a room on the 35th floor. Don't do that if you can't. You know why? It has to do with firefighting, but it's interesting. Most aerial ladders will only reach up to the 8th floor. They will not reach above it. If you're above the 8th floor, your chances maybe of getting out and getting trapped are far greater than if you're on the lower floors. Aerial ladders can reach up to that. Above the 8th floor, it's questionable. So remember that when you're going someplace on vacation and they say, yeah, we have a room, you could have a room on the 6th floor, or you could have a room on the 25th floor. Take the room on the 6th floor. Be a lot easier in case something happens. But always do look for your exits and always do know where to go in case you do have any type of emergency that you get involved with. Be familiar with the floor plan exit from your normal work area. This is something that I just said, and we all should be aware of how to get out of your work area. Do not panic, do not push, shove, or run. The one thing that they have found out in studies about fire deaths, and this is very interesting. Everyone thinks that people died in fires because of panic. No, that is not true. Panic comes at the end. The word to remember when there is a fire emergency is complacency. It's exactly the opposite. And this comes through a study done in Europe, and actually in Europe they're doing more of this than in the United States, which I don't know why, simply because the United States has more fire deaths in a year than Europe does. But they have a field called fire psychology, why people die in fires and how they die. They've studied all kinds of major fires around the world, all the way back past even the Chicago fire in 1871, which they figured out a number of people died there through complacency. What complacency is if you smell smoke, if you see a fire, do something. Don't do anything. And many times this has caused people. One good example, an example I could give you of how this works would be probably, we all know about the Titanic, the ocean liner struck the iceberg. Now the Titanic was built with watertight compartments, but the watertight compartments were not built to make the ship unsinkable as it ended up getting labeled. Watertight compartments were strictly built for the ship to float longer for help to come to get passengers off in case of a disaster. Well, once the Titanic hit the iceberg and started to go down, people that were on the ship said, this isn't going to happen, there's nothing here. Why should we leave this ship? This ship is unsinkable. Nothing's going to happen. They were complacent. The first bunch of lifeboats leaving the Titanic, capacity 65 people, 12 people in the lifeboat. 40 people, 15 people in the lifeboat. They couldn't understand why until after the disaster. Then they investigated it and found out it was complacency that caused this. People didn't want to get in the lifeboat. They said to themselves, why should I get in that boat? I'm here, I'm safe on a big ship, and the ship ain't going to sink. After a while, when they saw the ship dipping down, most of the lifeboats were gone, then we had a panic situation. And this is exactly what happens. Instead of you're sitting at your desk somewhere, you smell smoke, well, the heck on it. Maybe somebody has a cigar outside. No, get up and take a look, because that difference again, remember going back to my word again, time. You have time, you're not going to have time in that type of an emergency. So this is why I always say to people, always don't be complacent if you see something happening. Do something now. Do something immediately. Pull the fire alarm. Go check it out what it is. That time difference that'll take you to escape could be your life and maybe other people's lives. This is something that we have to watch. The other example was that during the Chicago fire, and this is interesting too, the fire was spreading faster than people could walk, and even some people could jog. Yet people on the outskirts of the fire thought it was a real neat thing. They actually had parties in their yards, sitting there and having something to drink and eat, not realizing that the fire was coming right at them, and they ended up being consumed. By the time they understood that we have a major problem here, it ended up that they got killed by the fire raging toward them, and did not understand that. So never be complacent when you're facing an emergency situation. Do not panic. The other thing that they have here is close, but do not lock doors. This is very, very Use this at home, use this on the job. Why is that? Fire, there's three components for a fire to burn. First one is heat, second one is fuel, and the third one is oxygen. Knock off any one of those, and they call that the fire triangle. It's the fire triangle like that. You take away any one of those things, the fire will go out, especially even in your home or on the job. Don't lock your doors, because that makes it tougher for firefighters to get in there and fight the fire. You have to chop the door down. But close the door. What closing the door does prevents oxygen from feeding into that fire. If it's in that room, it will segregate it in that room, at least to the point where it will slow it down. Leaving the door open creates what a fire loves: air, oxygen. Fires love that. They eat up on it. They grow bigger. They breathe. That's how they breathe, is through the oxygen. So on your way out of your office, just close the door. Close as many doors, even if you're walking out and you see other doors open, close them. Wherever that fire is at, this will cut down and slow the spread. The other thing you have to remember is this one thing, is that fire is not what you see on TV. All of us are familiar with the movies, Backdraft, Towering Inferno, all of these things. You watch movies, you see firemen, firefighters inside the building walking, oh, it's nice and bright, a little bit of smoke. A fire is nowhere near that. You will be surprised how quickly a fire can spread and endanger you and engulf you. Inside of a fire could be a bright sunny day outside, and I've been in this situation many times. I've been a firefighter for City of Nanticoke for 36 years. Been in a lot of situations over the years. When you get into that building, it could be bright and sunny out, but once you get in there, it is black. It is pitch black. You can't see anything in there. So don't think, and in America we have this perception that has been sort of drilled into us by our movie and television industry, and this is why I go back to that word: people don't understand the time you have, because you don't have that time. And people become so, I guess, used to this type of situation that they think if somebody comes in and says, well, you know, down the hall there's a big fire in the garbage can back there, oh, that's okay, it's all right, it's not going to hurt us. And they're under the wrong impression. That fire could spread so quickly and kill everybody in that building. And it is also black. You're not going to see. If you have a fast-spreading fire, something that erupts very quickly, you're going to run into that situation. The other thing is you have to remember is that do not enter a building once you leave it. Before, we used to have people that would go outside, go back in. Statistics point this way. 97% of people that get out of a fire and go back into a fire usually don't come out of that. They will die in there. Reason is this: by the time they get out of that building and go outside, for what they saw inside what was on fire, and they go back in that time period, the fire could have doubled or even tripled in size. The whole situation inside that building has changed. It is not the same way. So never ever go back in. The other rule of thumb we go by anymore is this: once you get out of the building, now I know it's hard to judge this, but once you get out of a burning building, let's say this building, we have a lot of smoke, a lot of fire, and you get outside, is to double the height of the building. If you think the building is 50 foot high, double that 100 foot, and that's how far you stay away. There has been many injuries caused by people hanging around the building that is on fire. Fire builds up pressure. If a fire is burning in a room, once that pressure builds up to a certain point, it will blow the windows right out. And if you're standing around there, you're going to get showered with glass naturally. That's something you don't want to do. So we tell everybody anymore is please do not stand by the building, get out. Make sure you at least stay 100 foot away from the building. Plus, in our situation here with the population we deal with, who we know at times are unstable, you have to keep them away from the situation. A lot of them do like and have an interest in fire, which might make them have a tendency to maybe run back in to see what's going on. So always remember that. Always stay away from the building. And that includes your own home, too. If you have a fire in your home, please do that. The other one is use sense of smell and touch as well as sight of detection in a fire situation. The interesting thing about this is what people don't know is if you feel you're in your office and there's somebody yelling there is a fire out here, you think it might be in your area, don't use your hand flat to touch your doors. Always touch your doors to see if they are hot. If that door is really hot, don't open it. Use the back of your hand. Don't use the front. The front of your hand here, you're used to doing things that used to hot water. The back of your hand isn't. If you put the back of your hand against that door and you have to pull it away, don't open it. That means the outside temperature is a lot greater than what you think it is, especially if it's that hot on the inside that you can't. So always feel with the back of your hand. Use the same methods in your own home also. If you're in a bedroom or whatever you're in, bathroom, you think that somebody's yelling, you hear a member of the family, oh my God, the place is on fire, always feel your doors. Don't use the palm of your hand, use the back of your hand. The other thing that's right below that we have here, I think the sense of smell and touch as well as sight, that sort of self-explanatory. You see something burning, you understand, you see the flames coming out of somewhere, well, you know what to do then. You would pull your fire alarm and immediately start evacuating people. People that have clothes on fire, this has changed a little bit. I don't know if it's in the newer booklets here. I have one, maybe one of the older ones. But if your clothing ignites, stop, drop, and roll. I don't know if it's in your booklet, but it should be cool and call. Okay, that is the newest addition to the stop, drop, and roll. It's been out maybe about 5 to 10 years where they come out of that. They're pushing that now. Reason is for that, stop, drop, and roll is self-explanatory if your clothes catch on fire. The cool and call means that if you do have burns, immediately cool your burn under cold water. Not real cold, don't put ice on it or anything, but under cool water. Cool water will keep the infection rate down, and it also cools your burned area, which is still hot from being burned. The call means that if the burn looks serious, and it looks really deeply red, or it's blistered, to call 911 for emergency help, or maybe get you to an emergency room where it could be treated. So that is the difference on that situation there. It's not stop, drop, and roll anymore. It's stop, drop, roll, cool, and call. And I think this is starting to catch on. Crawl instead of walk if a room is smoke-filled. Heroic action is not expected. Fumes and smoke can kill. Use common sense. The reason that they have changed to the crawl on your floors, before they used to say get down all the way on the floor and crawl out that way. What they have found out, I don't know how many years ago this was that they ended up with a number of people dying. And they couldn't figure out why people are crawling like that, which they were told to do, which even myself years back, doing any type of fire trainings, was telling people, crawl that way. What they have found out, and this is, I guess we could blame our great technology on this, is that all of our materials anymore are synthetic. We don't have that many homes or anything in them made out of pure wood, of organic materials, which they burn, give off different types of gases. All of this stuff here that we have here gives off toxic gases, many of which are heavier than air. So what happens is this. The chair was burning, a couple of chairs were burning. You will have the gases from this go down to the floor, not the smoke. Smoke will rise, room will become dark. The gases. If you went down real low into them gases like they taught before to really get down low and crawl out, what you would do, and this is why the people were dying, is they were breathing in the toxic gases there. If you go on all fours, here is the reason why. At ceiling height in a fire in a room, temperature could be anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 degrees. Coming down to my eye level, I'm 6'2", it should be anywhere in an area of maybe 600 to 800 degrees, all of which will kill you. I learned that lesson quick one time at a fire by walking in and not crawling in like we usually do for some unknown reason, and ran into something. I don't know how hot it was, but it immediately melted my face shield on my fire helmet. Just right in front of my eyes, just like that, shriveled right up. So we teach you get down lower. From probably here down to maybe, I can't do it there, about this high up above the floor, and then probably up into about here, you'll hit a pocket of air that is breathable, what they call breathable air. Now, there'll probably be smoke in it and everything from the fire, but it will be breathable enough to get you out of that area that is on fire. Don't ever stand up, because this is what you're going to encounter, especially in the building situations that we have. In our boat centers, these are pretty good buildings. They're brick on the outside, which means a fire in any area is going to become hot, and it's going to become hot quick. In some of our older buildings, you might have a problem there with very quick fire spread. Remember this, and a lot of people don't know this, is that 150-degree temperature is enough to start shutting your body down. Everybody thinks it's higher. It isn't higher. It's 150 degrees. You start breathing in air, that's 150 degrees. It'll automatically start shutting your windpipe down, your lungs down. As you keep breathing it and gets a little bit hotter, it'll automatically singe your windpipe and your lungs. And what happens is, basically, you'll be dead. So, if you want to test this theory, do this. Tell people to do this. Your oven at home. I don't know, the modern ovens today, you could set different temperatures. But even if the lowest temperature you have on your oven is 200 degrees, 50 degrees higher, set it at the 200 if you're going to put something in the oven. Then open the door just a little bit. Just crack your door open like that. Just put your face down there for a second or two. See how long you could keep it there. And if you have an oven that goes that low to 150 degrees on warm, try it. The biggest problem we have today is with people, and I go back to that word again, time, who think they have time to get out of fire. And then what happens is they start panicking because they were complacency at the beginning, not doing anything, then they end up in a panic situation, stand up, and immediately they're right in that. And believe me, a couple breaths of 800-degree air, and that's it, you're gone. There's nothing else you're going to do about it, and it's amazing. You have to remember, too, that sprinkler heads, we're lucky here, we have sprinklers in this building. Sprinkler heads, most of them are made to go off at 145 to 150 degrees, so you're right in this area here where it could be a danger to you. And you have to remember that is not no 100 degrees made to go off. Usually they're made to go off at 145 or 150s, depending what kind of links they do have in there. I don't know what temperature they do have in there. The other thing to remember when you are in a fire is this, and I think on the other page there where we're coming down to it, is always tell whoever you're passing by to get out of the building. Many times people in a building situation where there's a number of people involved, they're going out, but they don't tell anybody else what's going on to get them out. Even if you're passing somebody, they're in their office, you can stick your head in and say, put the phone down and get out. We have a fire, and it looks pretty bad. The one thing I noticed the one time we did a fire drill here was one person was on a phone and says, well, I'm on the phone, I can't leave, I'm talking to a client. I don't care who you're talking to, it's your life. Hang up the phone, tell them you have an emergency, and get out. The one thing we have to remember is to evacuate the building and to get out and not worry about whatever kind of files you have on your desk, whatever charts, whatever you're doing, whoever you're talking to. Emergency situation takes precedent over everything. If it's not a bad situation, you'll be back in. If it's a bad situation, you'll be happy you left when you did. So always remember that, and always remember the crawling. The next section they have here is if fire is in your area. Persons discovering the fire. Rescue individuals in danger. Well, this situation would be rescue individuals in danger if they are not in mortal danger. Remember me saying before, fire will spread quick. Fire can double in size in a couple minutes. You're not going to have that time. If someone looks like it's a situation that might endanger more people, you're going to have to look at it at this point, well, I don't think I could get to them. Don't risk your life to maybe someone who you can't really get to. So it is a tough situation, but the best thing to do is at the beginning right away if there is a fire is to get people out. Contain fire if possible, either using an extinguisher or closing the door of the room. The closing of the door of the room we already did talk about. Using a fire extinguisher, well, I have to say this. Has anybody here ever used a fire extinguisher to put out a fire? If you have, then you know a little bit about them. Fire extinguishers come in different sizes. Most common types are 5 pound, 10 pound. They do make them a little bit smaller, they do make them bigger. For our purposes, we'll go with 5 pound, 10 pound fire extinguishers, which is mostly what we have. On the extinguisher, you'll see letters, AB, it'll be ABC, it'll be BC. This indicates as to what that extinguisher, the type of fire you put out. A Class A fire is wood, paper, cardboard, cloth. B fires, I was right. Class B fires are gasoline, kerosene, any flammable liquid, alcohol. Class C fires are all of your electrical appliances. Now, there is a class of fire that we might run into here. There's been rumors of this over years and years. I'm not sure if this is true or not. It has to do with what is called Class D, which is flammable metals. And it includes things like magnesium, titanium, zirconiums, and certain sodiums. Titanium was used, magnesium is one of the things that are used in road flares, which you know you can't put them out. The only things that will put them out is wet sand. Put them out with that. Water won't put them out. You can dump. That's why they last in rainstorms. There was a rumor years back, I don't know how many years ago, in the computer industry that they were using titanium, little dots of titanium in computers. And they never admitted it. I don't know if there was ever evidence of it. The reason I'm saying it is because we do have such equipment. Titanium burns with a little blue flame. Looks like a little welder. Due to the amount of heat that your regular power line will give, there is a possibility that it could set that on fire. Now, if you used a regular extinguisher, you wouldn't put it out. I don't think it's nothing much to worry about. I'm just bringing it up in case you do run into that type of situation. It does seem to do with that, since it would be in such a small amount, and that's what you see if you throw the thing out here and throw it out or somewhere, you know, because it will burn itself out. But it is very difficult to put out in Class D, and plus we don't have any Class D fire extinguishers. We do have fire extinguishers which are called halons. Now, halon is a gas. It was outlawed for a while, it's back in again. We do have them in our secretary pools. We don't have them anywhere else. Halon is a very good extinguishing agent. I could stand right here and the microwave over there could be on fire, and I could hit that extinguisher from here and it will put that fire right out. There's nothing wrong with it. One thing with halon that makes it dangerous is the halon gas is made to suck oxygen out of the air. When it originally came out, all of the computer companies in New York City were buying the big halon systems in their computer rooms. What happened one time was about, I don't know how many years ago this took place, when the computer rooms were really huge. They had one of these automatic systems. One of the computers did catch on fire. It kicked the halon system. The halon system dumped right out, put the fire out, because it doesn't damage anything. All you have to do is repair it. There's no powder or anything else like regular extinguishers. And what happened was after that happened, 4 people died in the room. They couldn't get out. They didn't realize that the halon, and I don't think the manufacturer maybe didn't realize that, but with that sucking out of the air of the oxygen, the people couldn't breathe and couldn't make it out. We only have them for extinguishers here. I know I did inform the girls that do work in the pool of what to expect with that. The other thing to remember is this, the PASS system. The word PASS that I said at the beginning. The PASS system is about how to operate a fire extinguisher. P-A-S-S. It means pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. If you've never used a fire extinguisher before, it's a good thing to remember, but you have to remember when you use a fire extinguisher, when you do this and you squeeze that handle, it's going to give you a kick. It's made out of, there's pressure in there. A lot of people sometimes when they do that, they get afraid and aim it the wrong way. The sweep is important, to sweep in towards the fire. If you aim that extinguisher directly on the fire, let's say it's a waste paper basket filled with paper, and you just sort of hit it right on top, you're just going to blow all that flaming paper right out of there. My opinion sometimes on the word pass is they should change it to task, T, instead of pull. There are a lot of some manufacturers of fire extinguishers, maybe not the manufacturers, but people that service them. On the fire extinguisher, you will always see where the pin is. There's always that plastic tie. Sometimes these people, and at the beginning when they were putting them on there, you could pull that pin and that, you know, your tie will stretch, but it won't clear the openings for you to squeeze the handle. Once they got to a certain length, you couldn't pull it anymore. It wouldn't stretch. If you twist that pin, twist it. Remember, twist first. You twist the pin, no matter what that tie is made of, it'll snap it. And then you can remove the pin. Unfortunately, that had to be done because for some unknown reason, people were stealing pins out of the fire extinguishers. What they were using them for, I have no idea. I spent 11 years in the fire equipment industry, and I was there when this was happening, and this is when we had to put the ties on. At the beginning, though, now they supposedly have ties on there that should snap, but you still never know what could be on there. If it was serviced, did they replace that? Don't take the chance. The other thing is, as I will say this, if you don't have or any knowledge of using a fire extinguisher, it'll take you 30 seconds to read the directions on how to use that fire extinguisher. In 30 seconds, that fire could be out of control, and it also could spread and endanger your life. So in that case, you're better off not even bothering. The last thing to remember about fire extinguisher use is this. Never ever, if you're going to put out a fire with a fire extinguisher, never ever let the fire get between you and the exit out of that room. Always make sure that the extinguisher is in front of you and you have your back towards that exit. Don't go around the table here someplace, and if the fire is over there or something like that, and you come over here and put it out, and all of a sudden that fire flares. Now you have a problem. The doorway is there. You might not be able to get out, even with the extinguisher. Remember, an extinguisher will shoot off maybe grand total, depending on the size. It could go from anywhere from maybe 8 seconds to 20 seconds, 30 seconds on some of the bigger ones. But that's all the time you have. You know, some people have the misconception with a fire extinguisher that this thing will fire and keep on blowing your extinguishing agent out for quite a while. No, it's only going to go off for maybe that amount of time. So I would roughly say 8 to 20 seconds. 8 to 30 would be tops. Also, another tip is this. If you ever have to use a fire extinguisher, don't be afraid of the contents inside. None of it is harmful. Mostly baking powder with different chemical additives to either cut off the oxygen or coat whatever is burning with the powder, which will prevent it from burning. In other words, we go back to the fire triangle. It'll cut the heat. Either the heat it'll take away by its coating, or it'll snuff out the air. That's why you get that big cloud. But it won't hurt you. Okay, you don't have to be afraid of breathing that in or anything. There's nothing dangerous in there. The other thing about extinguishers that I like to say there, and it goes sort of, I could say this, and when we put all of this together now, roughly what you have time-wise to get out of a fire before when it starts is it's a little bit less now, but we'll go on this because it's easier to figure it out this way. We'll go on 3 minutes. Now, it takes usually 2 minutes for any alarm system to go off from the time the fire starts. Remember this, depending on what is burning, fire could spread as double in size every 30 seconds. So it'll take that fire 2 minutes to hit an alarm to set the alarm off, which gives you, going back to the word time, gives you only 1 minute to get out. And this is something I always stress. Always remember that. I'm going on the 3 minutes, but it probably is less now than it was years back. The 3 minutes is from a few years ago. I use it that way just because even in your home, the same thing would happen. You have a fire in your home, it's going to be 2 minutes before that smoke alarm. They're making the smoke alarms right now. The ones on the market now are more sensitive, might go off quicker. So you might gain maybe 30 seconds or maybe even a minute. So even if you gain a minute, you still only have 2 minutes. And in an emergency situation, in a fire situation, that is not a lot of time. So always remember that word time there. Pull the alarm. Okay, here we go with this one. Pull the alarm. If you have an alarm, pull. If you don't, rule of thumb is this in calling the fire department. With today's cell phones, I think this is a better idea. A lot of times if you have a fire inside of a wall, many times electrical wires or phone wires could be following that same wire. What happens a lot of times in a fire, especially a fire that maybe is centered inside of the wall, is what it'll do, it melts the phone lines. What it'll give you, and this has happened, I've had experience with this in a fire, where the people in the house had a fire, they knew it was somewhere in their wall, the walls were hot, stuff, drapes were starting to melt, and the fire didn't break out yet. They picked up the phone, they dialed the fire department, they had a dial tone, they dialed the number, the phone just kept on ringing. And what happened was the phone line shorted out like that, and it gave them a false sense that the phone was operating, but no call ever came through. So with our cell phones today, I always recommend, even though here we have the switchboard, we have many phones, you never could be sure of what's going on. So you call from the inside, and I would suggest it doesn't matter how many people call. The more people call, so what? That's the people's job at 9/11 is to answer the phones. So the other thing to do, never ever rely on someone else to call. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I have seen people make over the years in firefighting. Guy's house is on fire, neighbor's standing there watching it. He yells to the neighbor, call the fire department, hurry up, call the fire department, look at it's blazing away, I'm gonna go get my garden hose. What does the guy do next door? Ran into this problem. This is a true story. About maybe 20 years ago this happened. We had a fire in the home, same situation. Fire was in the kitchen and spread to the back porch where he had a bunch of boxes. Fire was really blazing. Towards the evening, neighbor came running out of the house. This guy did exactly what I said. He was going to get his garden hose. He's yelling to the guy to call the fire department. Well, it's almost dark. The fire's nice and bright. What did the neighbor do? Stood there and was watching the fire. Never called. Matter of fact, what happened? Taxi driver dropping somebody off out in the street seeing the fire, and he's the one that called the fire department, and that was almost 10 minutes into the fire. When we got there, this guy was mad, all upset. Where were you guys at? How come nobody came? I told him to call. Well, he never called. So never rely on someone else, even at your own home. And this is a situation, so I'm using this example. You have a fire in your home or something, and you're all, naturally everybody gets a little bit excited with that. Don't tell someone standing there to call the fire department. Many times they forget about it. They become interested in the fire. Oh, look at the flames, look at this. So never tell somebody. If you do, stand there with them until they call. Be there. Say call them, and stand there. Don't say call them and then take off. Many times it's a delay, causes damage, injury, maybe even death. In our situation here in our center, they will make the announcements as you see here. There is an emergency in the building which requires immediate evacuation. They will repeat it 3 times. At that point in time, you hear that, immediately alert anybody around you, evacuate the building, go to the nearest exit, get everybody out. Naturally, supervisors and other employees, our floor captains, which we have appointed for our safety committee, which are required to check the floor that they are on to make sure people are evacuated and reported to administrative ranks as quickly as you can do this. So this threat is something that we have to take serious, and it's not because I spent a little bit more time on this than I wanted to, it's because of our patient population. Remember this, we have people whose insight and judgments are not built 100%. A lot of them smoke. A lot of them like fire. Remember this. A lot of them maybe are smoking somewhere where they shouldn't be smoking. They hear somebody coming. What are they going to do? They're going to dump that cigarette someplace where that's the quickest area that they could think of, which isn't going to have anybody notice them smoking, which they shouldn't be doing. And then you have a situation. So remember what we are dealing with on the job on a daily basis. And a lot of times, you could even ask them, were you smoking? No. What'd you do with the cigarette? I threw it outside. They didn't throw it outside. They might have thrown it in the closet. They might have thrown it in the chair. They might have thrown it in the waste can. Then you leave that area. Now you have a situation. So, we have to watch with populations that we deal with. Our next one here on page 6 is threatening situations, bomb threats, weapons, assault threats. And these instructions are planned to serve as a guide in the event of a threatening situation. Personnel are expected to exercise sound judgment in carrying out responsibilities during a crisis. There's one thing, bomb threats, that's what our population, a lot of them like to do that. We had a situation with our center here, I think it might have been back in about 1982. Someone was calling in a bomb threat every night. We were getting a bomb threat a night. It was around about 1982, 1980. I wasn't working for Northeast Counseling at that time. I was still in the fire equipment industry. But we were getting this every night for about 4 nights. Couldn't figure it out for a while. There's always a bomb threat. There's a bomb in here, it's going to blow up. Usually between 7 and 7:30. Finally, I made the suggestion, because I did work in a state hospital, and there was a lot of shenanigans with bomb threats in them places, believe me. And that was the patients that lived there. And I said to our fire chief, I said, you know what? Next time we get one, tell all the trucks not to come in with no lights, don't blow no sirens, and park up there. We did that 2 times. Never had a bomb threat since. So we knew it had to be someone who was involved in treatment somewhere, like the lights, the sirens, and all the action and everything else, because it was always in the evening. So you never know what you're going to get there in those situations. When you do receive a call, the person answering your call, and here's one thing to remember in this situation, details. Details mean a lot. Well, any kind of little detail that you could pick up. Keep the person talking as long as possible. Make a decision, are they threatening you? Are they threatening property? Or are they threatening someone else? Try to get a name off them. Maybe it's not somebody threatening you. You could say, well, if I know that person, who are you threatening? Me? Well, no, I'm threatening so-and-so. They're my therapist. Now you have an indication as to maybe who it could be. You'll also have an indication there that you know that this person is coming to our center. So these are things that we have to be alert to. Be also alert, which they say here, background noises, music, voices, anything that you could maybe pick up off of them where they might be calling from. There was an instance somewhere, I think it was in a newspaper, where someone was threatening to blow up someone's house, and whoever was answering the phone kept them on the line, and they actually got the name of a bar that the person was calling from. Because someone in the background passed by and said to somebody else, don't you just love blank blank bar? And they got it right away. Called the police. Police were there. They kept the person on the phone, and they actually arrested him in a place. He was still on the phone. So any kind of details, that's the main thing here, is details, details, little details. No matter what you think it is, write it down. Note voice characteristics. Does it sound like somebody's faking? Is it a deep voice, high voice? Do you think it's male or female? Remember, a lot of people are good at disguising their voices. It could be a male talking like a female. You never know what's going to happen. And you have to sort of be able to distinguish this. Also ask them questions about Northeast Counseling. See if you can determine whether that person is one of our patient population. Are they involved with us? Or maybe not. Maybe it's someone else. If they give you some details about our building or the building you're in or someone there, then we have a pretty good idea that that is exactly what they're someone that we are treating, and that we could probably find out sooner or later. A lot of times some of our members might call because they don't want to come in for an appointment. Sometimes they do things like that in order to maybe figure, well, if I call up and threaten or something, then, well, I won't have to come. I'll tell them the place is going to blow up and everybody will get out and it'll be around my appointment time. A lot of times you could figure it out if someone has an appointment at 2 o'clock and calls up and says the building's going to blow up in 10 minutes. Well, it's 10 to 2, 2 o'clock. You can also go down the list and see who had appointments at 2 o'clock and call them back. So there's all kind of ways to do it. Always look what time your call was received and the time the caller hung up. Complete your threat procedure report. Immediately notify our director, your supervisor, and anyone else that you can. Also, you might get a threat, and this is one where you'd have to get police involvement. You get a threat on the phone and someone says, and it might not be a threat that someone's going to do this or do that or beat you up or whatever. Could be somebody saying to you on the phone, I'm going to be there in 15 minutes with a gun, and I'm going to shoot everybody I see. I'll be right in that building. Okay, now we have a situation which is life-threatening. That could be a very life-threatening situation. That could happen. Remember what I said before. We have people dealing whose insight and judgment skills are poor. Could be anything. We know that in working in this job, in this profession. Now, we know that. You never know what to expect on a daily basis. So you might have that situation there where someone might call and do that. In that situation, notify your supervisor. You have to notify administration. Definitely notify the police department, because in this instance, if we don't have any idea, this could definitely happen. It could be someone maybe who is not involved with us, but a relative or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband and a wife. Could be someone right outside of our realm. And so if we get anything like that, definitely I would say police involvement would have to be down. Now, we've talked sometimes, and I know this has happened in the past, about locking the building down. If a decision is made to lock down the building, senior staff person will notify the office, and that will be announced. The announcement will be, all staff secure your area. It will be repeated 3 times. Remember this, a lockdown is not to keep people in the building because we could get out. And legally we have looked into this, and really there's no way if someone says they want to leave, they want to leave. The lockdown is to prevent any type of threat from the outside coming into the building. I know sometimes that might be difficult because we all know certain people might say, well, you know, well, I have an appointment, I'm leaving. But the threat is from the outside. So our lockdown policy is to keep any danger from coming in. So all supervisors and everybody else will ensure that all, even windows, remember this, you have a window open, somebody comes, tries the door, and they're the ones that are coming in to do some kind of damage. If they're really intent on it, they will definitely look around, walk around the building, look for an open window, and they will try to get into the window. So we make sure everything is locked down so they can't get in. Unfortunately, we can't stop anybody from leaving. And once you're outside, you're on your own. Assign floor captains, employees, and consumers and staff and everyone else in the lockdown area. I think it's good there that we do tell people that there might be a danger outside. I don't think you have to be specific. If you get a report, or we get a report, well, there's someone out there that has a gun, maybe it's best to say that it is a dangerous situation and not really say that. It might create a little bit of a panic there. Remember this also. In some of these instances, especially where someone says, I'm going to come with a gun, shoot you. Remember this. Might be a good idea to stay away from the windows. Maybe they don't have to get in. Anybody who's a good shot with any kind of weapon could stand outside and shoot through the windows. We don't have bulletproof glass, so this could be a definite possibility. If a decision for any type of reason, if there was a danger in the building, maybe someone is already in the building, we might have to evacuate the building in that instance where it's safer on the outside rather than the inside. Any type of weapon involvement, though, I would definitely say we have to get police involvement. With our terrorist threat today, we don't know really what's going to happen. It could even be a terrorist. Remember, those people, their whole outlook is to create death and turmoil in any type of situation. Well, good place is a mental health center. They could claim any type of excuse to come in, and you know, for them, that's what their intent is. They do have, again, the announcement for evacuation of the building. There is an emergency in the building which requires immediate evacuation. This will be repeated 3 times. Again, all of our floor captains and employees will definitely make sure that if we do have to evacuate, that everyone is out. Our next section here deals with gas leaks. Now, we did have a gas leak in the Hazelton unit not that long ago, and it was a somewhat at times questionable situation. Gas is very dangerous. What natural gas is, roughly, it's methane gas. Since this used to be a coal mining working area for the coal mines, methane gas explosions were very common. Killed a lot of miners in our area. Natural gas is nothing more than methane gas. What the gas company does is add a sulfur smell to it so that if you have a gas leak, that's what you smell. Otherwise, you wouldn't have anything. The one thing, and I've always been very fearful of going on any fire calls that involve gas leaks. If I didn't have to do it, I really wouldn't do it. But gas is so dangerous. You never know when it's going to pop. I checked yesterday with National and UGI PNG, and I wanted to get the latest percentages. These percentages are the amount of natural gas to air. Surprisingly, our local gas company, if you have them or whoever you have, they're using the percentage of 5% to 15% gas to air. I thought it was higher. That's why I called them. I wasn't too sure on this. In an enclosed area, all you would need is 5% natural gas to cause its ignition point, which will cause an explosion. And a gas explosion is, we all know, devastating. We had that here in Nanticoke in about 1992, blew a 4-story building to nothing. in a matter of seconds. It's just seconds, just bang, that's it, gone. And it is something that we have to be very fearful of. I've always been fearful of it. I remember going to a fire in town here when they first instituted the charge for garbage. Gentleman didn't want to pay the garbage. He stored all of his garbage in his cellar. The cellar caught on fire. We got down to the cellar. The place was really blazing away. Got the fire knocked down. Myself and 2 other firefighters, we got down this. The fire was so hot in the cellar that the guy had 10-pound of potatoes on the top of the cellar steps, and as we were going down, they were popping. They were baked. They were like big fries, we were popping. But anyway, we got down in the cellar and we were putting out some spot fires there. It was live fire. And we could hear a hissing coming from someplace. I had no idea what it was. Finally found it here. The gas line ruptured at one of the junctures and was spewing out natural gas. But we definitely, that was the fastest fire I ever got out of in my life, because we were down in a cellar in a confined area. And you remember this percentage. Once gas and air hit that percentage. So 85% air, 15% gas. It's enough to cause that explosion. Now, what will cause that explosion? Any little spark, anything you can think of. Clicking on your cell phone, little spark in here, picking up the phone and dialing, shutting the lights on and off. So what we do have down here is definitely do not turn on or off any electrical appliances. In this instance, when you're evacuating, leave the doors open. The more air you have coming into the building, the better off it is to ventilate it. It is not anything to take lightly. I do know that in some situations people will smell gas for hours, and yet the gas leak might be in their basements, even at home. If you do that, you smell gas, immediately go checking it out. Immediately open up your doors, ventilate. Once gas hits that percentage, that is it. Any little spark it'll hit its ignition point, which will cause an explosion, which if you're around, you're not going to be around after that happens. Nationally, they're right in the ballpark too. National, going down to different agencies, including the federal government, they look at the percentage as 4.4 to 17%, so there's not much difference there. Call our on-call maintenance personnel, if you can. If there's a strong gas odor though, and it really looks that way, you're going to have to, maybe we just evacuate the building. Call 911, and naturally the gas company, which is listed here, and that would be their 1-800 number. The next section deals with community disaster plan. This is something that we sort of would not have that much control over. And if you look at your booklet there on page 10, the community disaster would be power plant, chemical fire. I've added something else in here that maybe people aren't aware of in town here. We have a railroad that comes right through to town. We did a survey, me and a few other people in the fire department, to see what is the railroad shipping. Well, a couple times we heard trains maybe coming up, and we have a fellow that works for the railroad, so he was giving us the times. We would just take a drive down to the crossing and see what was being shipped. Well, the one time we counted 10 tank cars right in a row of propane gas, followed by a couple box cars, and then another couple big tank cars of ethanol. Another one had chlorine gas. When we look at what was shipped, any accident there on that railroad would cause a catastrophe which we would have to evacuate. The power plant situation, that could happen any time too. The power plant will never blow up. What will happen to it is it'll melt down, and once that the hot radioactive material and uranium hits into the ground and groundwater, it'll start spewing out huge clouds of radioactive steam, which, as it spreads, will make the area uninhabitable for about 500 years or so. I think Chernobyl, they can't go back there for I don't know how many years. So the power plant, though, in a disaster, this would all come under EMA, our county EMA, Emergency Management Agency. They would call and say evacuation will be taking place. In the NANICO plan, they do have provisions that they would provide buses to come up to take any of our client population, our member population out. So, but sort of in those situations, we don't really have any control over. We would have to go by what people are telling us. The power plant is very, very good. any type of little emergency down there, they're immediately notifying people. So they're usually pretty good at judging as to whether that situation down there might jump to a higher level. If they feel that that's going to happen and evacuation is necessary, we would have time to do so. I still say that will probably cause a lot of confusion and a lot of people who are really fearful of that power plant down there. Nuclear power is nuclear power. Staff will instruct all clients and visitors to ensure their safety. Executive director will be notified. Staff and supervisors are always responsible for your area. If you have, maybe all of your members have gone home or something, always pitch in and give a hand to somebody else. It is always good to do. The next area we don't have, I don't know if we ever will run into them, but there has been many of them in our area sort of recently, in the last maybe 10 years, more than usual, is a tornado. Usually these things will crop up just like we've seen this storm come through. This could be a very quick episode. It could be happening very quickly because tornadoes don't really take their time. They will just set down. Hopefully we never have to experience one. However, we do get pretty good alerts from the National Weather Service anymore, which does give us some time. Our problem is we really, at all times, don't really have anyone monitoring our weather service. So sometimes there might be a tornado warning out. The weather stations, our local TV stations might be saying that, but unless someone somewhere hears it, that would be for us to decide, like, as to we should evacuate, where is the tornado going to hit. So it is something that for us, one thing to remember on our buildings here, since we do have our buildings, if that ever happens, go into the hallways. Hallways would be your safest place in a tornado. Don't stand by the windows and don't go outside. That's one thing that you never do. So if we ever did, and let's say they said they expected maybe a tornado to touch down somewhere in Anticoke, we know that, we hear that, instead of going outside, just go into the hallways there. With a tornado emergency, and we do know that it's going to hit us, or we do hear there's one on the ground. Basements, well, Michelle stated, basements in your building, if you could get to them. If you can't get to them, at least go out into the hallways. Well, the hallways would be your safest places. Don't stand by windows. The one thing to remember is about tornadoes is we never know when they're going to happen, and they could crop up very quickly. And sure, all employees, all of our consumers and members, always take care of them. I know that a lot of our population might think it'd be nice to look out the window and watch this thing. Well, you're going to have to do some certain things there to get them away from that. The one thing we have to remember is that if a tornado did hit, the one thing that kills most people after the event is over. The tornado goes through, you say, wow, that's great. Okay, everybody's in one piece, go outside. The one thing that kills most people after a tornado is electric lines. Usually they'll be laying all over the place. Never ever take for granted that a power line is dead. That has happened a couple times in my firefighting career where we went somewhere and thought one was dead and it wasn't dead, and when it starts sparking, well, you sort of know to stay away from it. But power lines are the biggest danger after the storm is out. Always maybe make sure that whoever you were with during the storm, because remember, power will be out. We do have emergency lighting, but there could be darkness. Maybe even take account of who was there by a voice. Say, are you here, that one here, whoever's there. It would be a good idea to do so with that. Our next section here is, I don't think we can do much about this in the event of loss of a power outage. Never ever, if we had a power line down off the building, best to call the power company. We're dealing with voltage, we're dealing with power there that could kill you in a second. So our best situation there, I think if it was on the outside, since we do have some of our members who like to walk around outside, we would definitely have to get staff members there to at least be somewhere in that area to prevent people going over there and try to bother it. Power lines are something that we don't want to get involved in. and it's best to let the power company and their personnel handle that situation there. On page 14, which is pretty much a self-explanatory thing, and I know we've all gone through some of these over the years, would be blizzard storms, ice storms, and usually this goes by what type and how bad the storm is. Usually if the storm is overnight, we usually don't have that problem in the morning, who can make it in, who cannot. We have had instances where we had a major storm hit maybe like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and at times trying to get transportation for a lot of our member population out here has become a problem. This again is something, I think this past winter we had the ice storm, which was very bad, which some of our members did make it in, and then some, luckily it cleared in the afternoon. But if things have gotten worse, in certain instances, I think we have to do contact administration and say things are at the point now that, these people better leave now or they're not going to be able to leave. Usually if there's any road closings, in our instance here, if there was any announcement from Harrisburg that warrants closings of all of our major highways, Route 80, 81, any of the interstates, Route 11, and that's usually up to Harrisburg to call that. If they call that, then in that situation there, that means everybody has to leave, because once the roads are closed, there's no way for people to get out. So in that situation, that would be, usually our administration is contacted and they would give the word that we all would have to leave. Blizzards, we did have a couple blizzards, I know that over the years, and some of these have been pretty bad, and there were times where during the day a decision was made to close the center, and the staff and the many members were here to be sent home. Our loss of electrical power, we did go over that. The only other one that we have left here is water main break, and this is something out of our control. We have to call our water company, which is Pennsylvania American. We have to know also, note in your booklet here, there was one thing I didn't say, is that there are some phone numbers that are different. Electrical service in Hazelton unit is through PP&L. In Nanticoke, it's UGI. So if you're down the Hazelton unit for any type of power problems, you would have to contact PP&L. There was an instance with something down there a few years back, and they were calling UGI, and UGI was telling the person that called, whoever the staff member was, something about some kind of power thing, that we're not going there, and they couldn't understand why. They don't serve that area. Pennsylvania Power and Light serves that area. Water company number is there. I think our gas company number remains the same. Water main breaks, the only thing I'll say on them is this. A lot of times people will do this on water main breaks, and a lot of times you get a water main break where it'll cave in above that water line. What a lot of people don't understand, and there was someplace out in the west somewhere where someone got killed in this instance. There was a water main break. Naturally the pressure of the water will wash out underneath, but it doesn't look like that from the top. You might see maybe a hole or something like this, and people go and they want to look down and see what's going on out there. There's water bubbling up. What they don't understand is that water that's bubbling up underneath could have washed out a larger area. In this instance, it did. And the person that went over to look down in there, unfortunately, was standing on nothing but the pavement to support him. The pavement gave way, and this individual dropped down into 20 foot of water and drowned, because it was all mud caving in, and actually drowned. Best thing to do is really sort of stay away from the hole if you possibly can, unless there's other circumstances that would warrant you to be there. It's always good if you do have to go over and take a look at it. Don't walk right up to it, sort of stay away from it. You can maybe look down. You never know, sometimes if you call the water company, they might ask something, well, if this is there. But always remember that danger that could be involved. Well, water in the water lines is high pressure. You get a good break in there, that water is gushing. And usually we don't find out about it until it reaches the surface in one way or another. But it could wash out a lot underneath that, where that water line has broken. And there is a tendency for that to cave in. The last couple pages here deal with the telephone threat report, which is a lot of what we went through, the background noises, voice, anything distinguishing. There's one thing about people that call in bomb threats. They always seem to be pretty good at saying where it is. I don't know why. But a lot of people who call in a bomb threat say, I'm going to blow up the place. Well, where'd you put the bomb? Oh, I put it here. Ones that are really professional at it wouldn't do that. They would just say it's somewhere in the building. But they might give you a clue. They could say, well, it's by that old stove, or it could be, I put it in the closet down there. Where? Well, in the basement. Well, you have an idea. Now, did they or didn't they? That's another question. But bomb threats you have to be somewhat careful with. A lot of times they'll tell you, if it's someone who's really mad or something, and they'll tell you, where's the bomb at? Well, it's underneath your desk. Well, now you know that maybe that's unrealistic, because then you could just say, I looked underneath there, there is no bomb. But you might have people that'll tell you that, which will get you if you're on the phone, or if you're in a, and it could be true. See, this is something you don't know. If you took the phone call in an office that no one has been in for a few hours, could there be or couldn't there be? In that state there, I'd still report that, and maybe there is. Usually in bomb threats, we usually do try to evacuate, since that is a circumstance that we don't know if it's true or untrue. And naturally, if someone is pretty good at that job of making bombs, they can make a bomb that could kill a lot of people. After the catastrophe, if there's anything else, you know, something did happen and we did the best we could with it, it's always be prepared to provide assistance in the office recovery as soon as possible. And it's always good to help out wherever you can. Remember, a lot of times if people are knocked down for something, whether it's staff, whether no matter who it is, always try to render some type of assistance. The more people there are that render assistance, the easier everything will be. And you never know. Maybe what you do for somebody will save their lives. And that's something that you have to remember. Do not discuss the situation with members of the media. This is something that I could say from experience. We had a fire one time on the east side of town here, and it was in a garage. And when I got down to the fire, there wasn't enough firefighters there, but the traffic problem was pretty bad. So I went up on one street corner to direct traffic, keep traffic away from the fire scene. In the meantime, a reporter from one of our local newspapers came by. I said, you can't go down there. He said, that's okay. He said, I'll park here. And he said, I'll walk over to the fire scene to check it out. He said to me, he said, I heard there was an explosion in the garage. Now, my words exactly to the reporter were this. I got here after, you know, when the equipment and some firemen were already on the scene. I did not hear of any reports of an explosion, but that could have been possible. The next day in the newspaper, that reporter had me quoting that when I got there on the fire scene, the garage blew up. I never told this guy anything, that's what I told him. But he took my story and twisted around. I did call the newspaper and talk with the reporter, and I asked him. I said, that is not what I told you. Well, you know, it makes a good story. You know, some people said that the garage, there was an explosion in the garage. I said, I did not tell you that, though. What I told you was exactly what I told you. I said, I did not see any explosion when I arrived here, but it could have happened earlier. But I did not have any reports of any. He took my words and he put my name in the paper and put right in there that I'm the one that said the garage there was a big explosion. Never said that. So always be wary of the press corps. They're looking for a story. They're always looking for a story. We do have our telephone directions all listed there on how to get from Hazleton to Nanticoke and vice versa. All of the ones to dial. We do have on the back page there is something about our floor captains. And I'll go back to what I said right at the beginning. Remember the two words I told you. CAS, which is a fire extinguisher use, pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. And the other word, which I think is more important than that, if you don't remember anything from this, is the word time. In any emergency that we are facing, no matter what it is that we talked about in this booklet, is that the time factor is something that we don't have, and you always have to remember that. It's the time that it takes to get out of any type of emergency is far less than what we think it is. And I'll give you one more little tip here before we leave. And somebody asked me this at one of the other in services that I did. And it had to do with, I don't know who it was, one of our people who were on the road asked me what they should do if their car catches on fire. Now here's a tip for you. All of the cars today that have been manufactured since about 1985 or so, 86, are all fuel injected, which means they have pumps, which means that's what supplies the fuel to your engine. It's under pressure. The best thing to do if you have a fire in your engine compartment is turn your key off. Turn your key off. Those pumps are operated by your battery. If you leave your key on, even though the engine isn't running, that power from your battery is still flowing to your fuel pumps. In your engine compartment, fuel lines are mostly steel or whatever they have, but there's no fuel lines that all go all the way around in all those little bends. Usually somewhere they have a little break, and on that little break they usually put a little piece of what they call gas line hose, which is either rubber or vinyl or whatever. If it's burning in your car and it burns through that and you don't shut your key off, then you have your pumps pumping the gasoline right out into your engine, which will cause more damage. So always a tip to remember. Actually, for those of you that have a lot of your staff members out on the road, that's a good tip for them to know. Because a lot of times they are taking, they are taking members and everything in their cars, and they could be stopped for a red light, malfunction in the engine. It is a good thing to remember. Turn your key off. That will cut the fuel supply. And it's something interesting that I think everyone should know in case you have that, and for yourself too. So I'd like to thank everybody for your attention. If you do have any questions about anything, do not hesitate to call me. My number is on our bulletin board out there. I'm always down Partial 2 or somewhere. Someone will always get in touch with me on any questions you might have about anything in this booklet or anything you need. Any safety emergencies that you see any place or anything, contact myself or anybody that's on our safety committee, and we'll try to take care of it as quickly as we can. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.